do not use third-party ink. Why is this so important? The big thing is that the head is calibrated specifically for our ink, and our ink is created specifically for our print head. They are a matched component. I cannot tell you if someone else's ink is properly calibrated. And knowing the care that we put into this, I don't think anyone else's is. So third-party ink can definitely damage your print head. It can definitely have more potential to clog. The other thing about third-party ink is I can tell you the names of every single person who touches our inks until they are in the cartridges. I know how long they've worked here, and I know how passionate they are about our ink and about our printers. I also know our quality check process, and I know the names of those people too. And they're not going to let ink get out that is not high quality ink. Things happen occasionally, of course, but it's very, very, very rare because of the amount of attention and care we put into that. Quality checking is such a huge part of what we do. Quality is extremely important to us. I don't know that for any third-party ink company. I only know what we make, and that ink is made specifically for this printhead, and this printhead is calibrated specifically for that ink. That's going to be important. Now, you may ask me, what do you mean by calibrated? If you want a great technical explanation of this, listen to our Ink Differently podcast, the very first one we did with Alex Tokarev. He explains it very well. I will try. Okay. So basically, how freely a liquid flows is called viscosity. So water has a very low viscosity, and honey has a very high viscosity. What does that mean? Water flows very easily. Honey, not so easily. Same thing with tree sap, not going to flow very easily. Our inks are somewhere in between those two as far as viscosity goes. Because of that, our printhead is calibrated. The nozzles are created to handle that specific viscosity. Even a slight change in viscosity is enough to impact how well it flows through the head. So, not knowing the viscosity, I can't promise you anything. So don't use third-party inks. Other things that I think are extremely important to keeping your printer healthy and extending the life. One is going to be making sure that your printer is turned on and plugged in at all given times. And the reason this becomes important is, what is not it rated? We want it to be able to do maintenance. So as you should know, one of the biggest things about the Sawgrass printers, the SG500 and the SG1000 and the old 400s and 800s that are still out there, is that this printer does daily maintenance. So for any 10 to 12 hour period where the printer is not in use, it is going to run a fraction of a percent of 1% of ink through the lines, and that helps clear anything that may be going on. So it helps prevent clogs on its own. Now, people will tell us sometimes, oh, the printer is doing a much longer cycle than I thought it should. One of the reasons is because this printer will detect if there is a clog. Now, it doesn't always work. That's why the manual troubleshooting is so important, the manual maintenance. But it will often detect and it will clean that on its own. So sometimes those cycles are a little bit longer. But keeping it turned on and keeping it plugged in allows it to do that. Now, the other thing to remember, and this is very important, is if I turn my printer off for 3 weeks, at the end of the 3 weeks, it knows that it has to compensate for the fact that it wasn't turned on for 3 weeks. Now, does it do 3 weeks worth of cleaning? No, it does not. But it does do an extended cycle to make up for that time, and it knows how long to do it. It's a very smart printer when it comes to this. So always turned on, always plugged in. Keep the printer clear, things on top and on the sides and the back. The other thing is with your ink. Now, the ink needs to be in date. You cannot have expired ink. Why is expired ink bad? The thing about the expired ink is the ink does start to break down. You are more likely to get clogs. You are also more likely to have color issues too with expired ink. So we really want to change that ink out on the expiration date. Where is the expiration date? Right on the front of those cartridges. But we do want to make sure that the ink is in date. Now, have I seen people online say, oh, I had expired ink in my printer for 6 months and it was just fine, you can do it. Don't listen to that, and here's why. My home's temperature and humidity is different than your home's temperature and humidity. Those things do impact. Other environmental factors will as well. So just because it works for you or someone else does not mean it'll work for you. And you're doing it at the risk of damaging your print head. Because if the ink starts to break down, if it starts to form lumps, clogs, then you are more likely to damage your print head. Do not use expired ink.